Our film opens with Conor, a young boy having a nightmare on the edge of a cliff, and he clings to his mother as she's about to fall, but finally lets go. And Conor wakes up and the time shifts from 12:06 to 12:07, and he gets up from bed and glances outside the window at a giant tree and proceeds to make breakfast. And after dressing in his school uniform, he checks on his sleeping mother in her bedroom before walking along the river to school. And during class, a boy stares at Conor, leaving a note in his book that he will be waiting for him after class. And the teacher notices that Conor seems worried, but he brushes off his concerns. And later, in the schoolyard, the boy and his two friends attack Conor, kicking and assaulting him while making fun of him. And returning home, Conor's mom surprises him with his grandpa's film projector, and they watch a King Kong movie together before Conor heads to his bedroom. And in his bedroom, he draws the tree that he sees from his window while putting on his headphones. And at 12:07, Conor hears a booming voice calling his name from outside. And he sees the massive tree outside his house transforming into a giant tree monster. And Conor shouts for the monster to go away, but it carries him out of his bedroom and into the garden. And the monster tells Conor that he will visit again and tell him 3 stories. And Conor must in turn tell the monster a 4th story, and the story must be the truth. And the truth has something to do with what Conor fears most and what he dreams of. And that's why he called the monster 4th. And as the confrontation with the tree monster comes to an end, Conor makes his way to his mother's room, where they both drift off to sleep. And the following morning, Conor's curiosity draws him towards the tree, but he quickly changes his mind and he heads back home. And upon his return, he discovers his grandmother waiting for him, and she begins to patronize him as the pair don't seem to get along. And despite her tone, Conor defends his mother, insisting that she needed time to recover after her treatments. And his grandmother insists that his mother won't improve within a day, even if she appears to be better. And she suggests that they discuss the idea of Conor living with her, which he immediately disagrees with. And as they argue, Conor's mom begins to experience seizures and his grandmother rushes to her aid. And Conor quickly fetches her medication. And as night falls, Conor's grandma settles into his bedroom while he takes refuge in the living room, cautioning her to leave his bedroom untouched. But Conor's peaceful slumber is interrupted by the same nightmare he had before. And as he wakes up, the clock ticks from 12:06 to 12:07. And a very powerful wind starts pulling things toward the door. And without hesitation, Conor follows the wind, opens the door, and encounters the tree monster. Initially, Conor is hesitant to listen to the monster's story, but he eventually relents. And accompanied by an illustrating animation, the monster tells Conor the first tale. In an old kingdom, a king loses his sons to battles, and he's left with only his grandson. And the prince, beloved by the kingdom, falls in love with a farmer's daughter. However, the king remarries and falls ill, dying shortly thereafter. And the queen, the new ruler, attempts to force the prince into a marriage to secure her position. But he manages to escape with his beloved, and under the branches of a yaw tree, they spend the night. But when the prince awakens, he finds his love murdered. And the yaw tree is the monster now, and he helps the prince seek justice against the queen, who he believes was responsible for the girl's death. And the prince rallies the villagers against the queen, leading to her banishment. But the monster reveals that the prince was the true killer, framing the queen to gain the kingdom's favor. And Conor is upset by this story, which has no clear good or evil characters, but the monster argues that life is more complex than that. And the queen may have been a witch, but she didn't murder anyone, and the king died of old age and not poisoning. And despite the story's lessons, Conor is worried about his grandma. However, the monster informs him that she's not the one he needs to save himself from. And the next day at school, the bully continues to torment Conor. And back home, Conor's grandma tells him about his father's arrival from America on Sunday. And as he gets into his mother's room, she's admiring the yaw tree, which she describes as over 1,000 years old, but also shares news of her failed treatment and the need to try a new one. And the next day at school, the bullies continue their assault, and Conor returns to his grandma's house, where she warns him not to touch anything, which includes her heirloom grandfather clock. As Conor listens to music, draws, and wanders around the house, his dad pays him a visit, and they go to an amusement park. And during their conversation, Conor insists his mom will be fine because of a new medication she's taking. And when Conor refers to his sister as his half-sister, his dad corrects him, saying that she's excited to meet him and trying to arrange a visit to LA. And although Conor is eager to leave his grandma's house, his dad clarifies that he only meant for Christmas. And back at his grandma's house doorsteps, Conor's dad explains that he can only stay until Friday due to the limitation on holiday time in in America. And feeling upset, Conor begins tearing apart his grandma's living room, even shifts the clock counter to 12:07. And the monster all of a sudden appears in the living room, and he tells Conor the second tale. And through illustrating animation, again, the story narrates that 150 years ago, there was a valley overrun with factories sprouting like weeds. And at the edge of the town, a stubborn pharmacist clung to his traditional ways of digging up herbs, barks, and berries, and leaves to make medicine. And nowadays, Conor's house and the yaw tree stand where a church with a pastor once stood. And sadly, the pharmacist's business sank as the villagers refused to buy his products due to the parson's preaching against them. And the pharmacist coveted the yaw tree, now known as the monster, for its healing properties that could cure any disease. But the parson, or the priest, forbade him from cutting it down, and the pharmacy refused to help him with his daughter's illness. And the priest, a loving and caring father, begged the pharmacy to save his daughter. But the pharmacist, who was still angry for the loss of his business, questioned why he would help him, and the pastor offered the yaw tree for his support, willing to abandon his beliefs to save his daughter. Unmoved, the pharmacist turned him down, and tragically, both daughters perished the next day. Because apparently it was both of his daughters that were sick with the same thing. Yeah. And that same night, the yaw tree transformed into a monster. And Conor obviously assumes that the monster will punish the pharmacist, but instead, he destroys the pastor's house. And the monster explains that the pharmacist, despite his greediness and rudeness, was still a healer, while the pastor was willing to throw aside his beliefs at the first sign of trouble. And the monster then proceeds to destroy the pastor's house, with Conor participating in some of the destruction. But when Conor returns to his grandma's living room, he realizes that the destruction wasn't just a fantasy, and everything in the room has been destroyed, including the clock that his grandma treasured. And Conor's grandma returns home, and he's terrified when she sees the scene. And he begs for her forgiveness, and he calls out her name, but she knocks over the last standing display cabinet, and she leaves the room. And Conor then hears her crying in her closed room, and he cries himself. And the following morning, Conor wakes up to find his father cooking eggs. And his father informs Conor that his grandma called him early in the morning, and Conor's mom is in the hospital. And Conor expresses his desire to go to the hospital, but his father reminds him that he's been upset and suggests that they clean the living room together while reminiscing about the good times that they had with Conor's mom. And later, at the hospital, Conor overhears his mom speaking to his dad in a very distressed tone. But she quickly covers up her emotions when Conor enters the room, and she tells him that she had a bad reaction earlier, but that the new medicine, made from the yaw tree, might help her. And she shares how chopping down the yaw tree could cure her, but it would feel like losing a friend. And that night, Conor waits until 12:07 before venturing into the garden and calling for the monster. And the monster appears, and Conor asks if he can heal his mom. And the monster explains that it's not within his control, but if it can be done, the yaw tree will do it. And the monster reminds Conor that he still doesn't know why he called him, and the third tale will soon be told. And Conor dismisses the nightmare he had earlier, but the monster urges him to tell the truth. And Conor begs the monster to heal his mom, but the monster just walks away. And the next day, Conor's father is packing up his car to leave for America. And Conor pleads with him not to leave his mom alone for Christmas, and he shares his optimism about the new medicine's potential to heal her. And his father tells him that he doesn't think this medicine is gonna help her. And they share an emotional farewell, and his father finally departs. And Conor returns home and begins cleaning up the mess, and he's also feeling really upset. And later, he catches his grandma watching old clips of him and his mom drawing together. And Conor then draws a picture of the tree monster. And at school, after an exam, Conor's bully spills juice on his drawing of the monster, and the bully confesses that he won't bully Conor anymore, as he realizes being invisible would be a worse fate. But he sarcastically apologizes for Conor's mom, provoking Conor's anger. And then the clock counts to 12:07, and at that moment, the monster appears in the cafeteria, and Conor charges at the bully, unleashing his fury. And Conor finds himself in the principal's office, and she questions him about the incident. And Conor claims that the monster hit the bully, but a flashback reveals that Conor himself did it, and the principal can exclude Conor due to school rules, but she just tells him to go back to class. And Conor returns to class, and everyone just stares at him. And on that day, Conor's grandma takes him to the hospital, where he finds his mother even sicker than before. And she informs Conor that the new treatment isn't really working, and that things have moved very quickly. And Conor doesn't believe her because it was from the yaw tree, but she does not respond when he asks her what the next treatment will be. And his mother apologizes and tells him that it's okay for him to be angry and to break things if necessary. And Conor runs all the way to the graveyard with the yaw tree and he screams for it to wake up. And the monster appears from the tree and Conor yells at the yaw tree because it didn't make his mom better as the monster promised it would. And the tree replies that he said if his mom could be healed, the yaw tree would be able to do it, but she could not be. And Conor screams for the monster to fix her or else he has no purpose, since the stupid stories just got him into trouble. And the monster says Conor was the one who called him and only he knows why. And Conor says if he called the monster, it was to save his mom and heal her. And the monster says he didn't come to heal her, but to heal Conor. And as the monster suggests to, Conor objects to hearing the fourth tale because he wants to go back to his mom. And as the fourth tale begins, the hillsides turn into a cliff that Conor has seen in his reoccurring nightmare. And his mother is standing on the edge, looking frail as ever. And Conor screams for her to get away, and a black smoke swirls around them as Conor asks his mom to run away from the cliff. And a wind made of black cloud pulls his mom over the cliff, but Conor catches her hand and holds her just like his nightmare. And as Conor struggles to hold on, the Yawtree monster tells Conor that this is the fourth tale and the truth of Conor O'Malley. And his mom falls into the cliff, and Conor finds himself back in the clearing. And the monster tells him that she's no longer there because he let her go. And the monster points out that Conor let his mom go, and he could have held on for longer, but he let her fall. And the monster forces Conor to tell his truth, the fourth tale. And Conor finally responds that he let her go because he wants it to be over, and he can't stand knowing she would die anymore. And Conor says that he didn't mean to hurt his mom, but the monster contradicts him, claiming that he did mean it, and at the same time, he did not. And this statement confuses Conor, prompting him to ask how both can be true. And in response, the monster poses several rhetorical questions from the 3 stories that he told him, such as how a prince can be a murderer and still be loved by his people, and how a pharmacist can be ill-tempered but right-thinking, or how invisible men can make themselves more lonely by being seen. And the monster emphasizes that what is important is not what Conor thinks, but what he does. And Conor, feeling exhausted, seeks his mom, but the monster reassures him that they will both see her that night, which will mark the end of the tree monsters walking. And that night, Conor wakes up to find his grandma searching for him, and she hurriedly drives him to the hospital where they stand waiting for a green light as the train passes by. And during this time, Conor apologizes to his grandma for the living room, to which she responds that it doesn't really matter, adding that they will have to learn to live together. And then they embrace each other emotionally. And as they get into Conor's mom's hospital, the monster appears and tells Conor that this is the end of the tale, and he instructs Conor to speak the simplest of truths. And Conor tells his dying mother that he doesn't want her to leave, and the monster tells Conor that the story ends with the boy holding on tightly to his mother, finally allowing her to let go. And as she takes her last breath, Conor's mom looks up at the Yawtree monster and smiles, and the monster smiles back. And later on, Conor returns to his grandma's house, where they seem to have established a more peaceful coexistence. And she informs him that she's prepared his room, and he expresses gratitude before going up to his room. And there he discovers a book of his mother's artwork, which contains drawings of a King Kong movie they watched together, and images of the tales that the monster used to tell him. And in the final page, he finds a sketch of the Yawtree as a monster with a girl sitting on his shoulder, revealing that his mother had also encountered the monster as a child, and the movie ends here. It's really interesting and insightful. I really urge you guys to check it out. I hope you guys liked my recap. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.